Yes.
Yes, I'll record it.
Okay, great. Are we ready to start recording then, or are we recording?
This meeting is being recorded.
Thank you.
And just so you know, Mayor, Amy is filling in for Trina.
Oh, great. Okay, thanks. Nice to see you again, Amy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and call the July 14th, 2022 special session of the McMinnville Water and Light Commission to order. And then we're first going, we're going to do a roll call. And so if you will do that for us, please, I would appreciate it, Amy.
Yes. Mayor Drabkin.
Here.
Commissioner Tankersley.
Here.
Commissioner Gormley.
Here.
Commissioner Christensen.
Here.
Commissioner Tate.
Here. Wonderful. If you don't mind, I think we'll also do staff introductions and everybody else on the line. So I'm just going to go across, or Amy, actually, will you just go across your screen for, well, I can do it. What am I saying? For all the folks that aren't on the commission, we'll just do a brief introduction. And this is partially for my benefit, being newer with your body. I want to make sure that I'm taking the opportunity every time we meet to learn everybody on staff, learn everybody, not just your name, but your function at McMinnville Water and Light. So thank you for indulging me for a quick second. And we'll just go across the screen. And if everybody will just introduce themselves. So I'll start with you, John Dietz, if you want to go first.
Sure. John Dietz, General Manager, McMinnville Water and Light.
Thank you. And Amy?
Amy Gonzalez, Engineering and Operations Assistant, filling in for the clerk.
Thank you. And Sam?
Sam Justice, General Counsel.
Thank you. And John Spence?
John Spence, Customer Service Manager at Water and Light.
Thank you. Mark?
I'm Mark Benmeyer, Finance Director at Water and Light.
Thank you. James?
I'm James Burke. I'm the Engineering and Operations Director.
Thank you. And Thad?
With that, Woodworth, IT Manager, Techno Support.
Great, wonderful. Thank you, everybody. So you received the packet yesterday along with a letter from John Spence. Would you like to do any council presentation, or I mean staff presentation to start, Mr. Spence, or do you have anything to add, or you'd like to talk about your letter as an entry?
Yeah, I can. I thought what I would do first is just kind of go over our current billing system and kind of how it's set up and how it functions. So we currently have 4 divisions set up separately in accounting and also set up separately in the CIS system. In those, each one is a separate provider. Inside of those, we have separate revenue classes set up. Inside of each one of those revenue classes, there are rates defined for each. And inside of those rates are devices, miscellaneous charge types. I wanted to kind of give an overview of kind of how it's currently working. Those are all set up by separate tables, and they are tied together by the customer information is connected to a provider through a meter, through a rate schedule. And those kind of things all pick depending on how you set up that particular customer. Kind of wanted to touch on kind of in our few conversations we've had with NISC moving forward. It has been decided that the service charge, the city service charge, would be added as a separate division, mainly to help keep counting separate. It would also be set up as a separate provider to keep separate in the billing system. The different revenue classes would have to match ours for residential general service, which it does. Inside of those, there's different charge types that the city has kind of identified in the memo that went to the council here, I think a few weeks ago, if not longer than that. But inside of each one of those, they have different classifications of charges. We are looking at adding those as devices in that division with that provider for the city service charge. And each one of those revenue classes, whether it's residential general service, would receive one of those devices at a certain charge type. Kind of moving forward with that, some of the challenges we see is one of the big ones is how the data is classified. In the ordinance that was written, we have our classification of residential, we have our classification as general service. We need to kind of make sure that those are the same if we're going to base what we have in our system already to make those identical to make these charges work. In the ordinance, there's also reference some ADUs, and I think by looking forward or looking into that a little deeper, maybe some ADUs that are defined, we don't necessarily have any billing for those in our system currently. Another main topic, I know the city wants to make sure that there's another 2 tiers for the residential class. Low income is one of those. The 2-year window, I think, should not be an issue getting started to set a customer up. We should be able to find payments that have been made on behalf of a customer at a whether it's light heat, customers helping customers, some form of assistance payment to identify them to start. I think where we see difficulty is moving forward on that 2-year rolling window. And the only way that I could see that is some kind of additional billing hook or custom program, or a daily process that has to be ran to add and subtract those customers. Another is the multifamily. In our system right now, we don't have a way to identify multifamily accounts. When we provided that information to the city to kind of come up with our numbers, we used a dwell count based on a landlord or an owner's water meter, and that is where that information reside. We have no way of tying a number of dwell counts on a customer's account to the number of, or to the actual accounts that supports directly without a bunch of manual intervention. Talking with Mr. Dunmeyer today, an issue that we kind of see that just popped up today with the multifamily, if we can identify them and move forward. A lot of those customers have, the management companies will have what's called a landlord leave on, or a transfer. When a tenant leaves, the service will automatically transfer to the owner, and they will pay the interim charges until a new tenant comes along. With that, this device that would hold this city service charge would transfer to that landlord. And that is a question I wanted to bring up, as should that landlord be paying for that? I don't know of a way that we would stop that yet. And there's something that I wanted to bring to the attention that we just learned of today. And I think the last thing that was on my list, we just want to make sure that any software efficiencies that we have come to enjoy and use. The credit cards was a great example. We were able to eliminate a part-time position by bringing those along. We don't want to bring a bunch of manual processes back to make sure that things aren't missed, or that would increase some manpower. And unless I missed anything, John or Sam, I think questions, comments, discussion.
Okay, great. So before we move into that, I do want to just respond with a couple thoughts and notes in some of the things that I have read here yesterday, and having been a part of these discussions. I'm going to start with some of your specific points. So kind of going from where you left off and back through the things you said in terms of software efficiencies. I mean, I think that, we had a lot of good faith conversations with Chair Tankersley and myself and Council President Garvin. And then we also had conversations with you, as you know, and our finance director, and Mr. Justice and the interim legal counsel for regarding this. So I think that, that's something that we always established in those good faith conversations, was that there was no desire to what was the word we were using? Not formulate, but to make your system try to work, not to try to make the NCIS system fold. And that was a major part of conversation from early on, was Water and Light carried the onus of telling the city what it could and couldn't do, so that the city could respond with, here are, this is what we would like, without requesting a customization. That was the word we were using. So very supportive of, efficiencies, generally speaking. That's always a goal. The thing that you identified today, landlord leave or transfer, I think also in those conversations we had, we've always identified that there were going to be misses and there were going to be some errors. That one doesn't raise a huge alarm bell for me, in that, so the landlord is going to be paying 75% of the $13 charge on their bill, or they're going to get a tenant in their rental. So I don't see that there's any motivation to hold a rental unit open to avoid whatever exactly 75% of $13.10 or whatever it is. But it does bring up that generally our intentions to provide relief, and that's a joint intention of Water and Light in the city, of everybody that's been in those meetings, that it's been very important to build in opportunities for financial relief, because, and I think it's important to recognize that this city service charge has inherent inequities in it. It's a flat rate that goes to customers. And so layering in financial relief through a variety of means, and most importantly, finding the methodologies that'll work for your system to continue to expand relief, is really, really important in all of this. Then some of the things you said were shocking to me, actually. When you were talking that you were not able to discern multifamily based on the dwell count. So this is surprising to me. And actually I'm going to say there are a lot of parts of the letter and the recommendation that were quite surprising to me. They don't feel in line with the good faith conversations that we had. And we spent a lot of time working through these issues and concerns so that we wouldn't end up back in the same place of wrestling back and forth over some issues. So that particular call out, I feel as though that we discussed that many, many times over with a lot of different people, and we found resolution on that you had master meters that could be looked at. So I have some concerns of what you're saying you're not able to do in this letter, and also of some of these major operational difficulties when we really spent a lot of time conversing about what would work and what wouldn't work in those good faith conversations. On its face, this really kind of looks like a departure from those conversations in some ways. And there's some major, the revisions to the draft ordinance are major. It's essentially been completely rewritten. With that complete rewriting, obviously, this was just published, right? We got it in our inboxes yesterday, maybe just over 25 hours ago. There wasn't this morning a link on the McMinnville Water and Light website. So, we've not had on the city side, nobody, city staff side has had even an opportunity to see these proposed changes to the city ordinance, and they are massive. They're massive revisions, right? So that is a little concerning for me. And I don't want to put us in a position where what we move forward out of this is just putting city staff and Water and Light staff back in a position where you're at loggerheads here, where you're not able to come out of this with productive work being done. And so with that, with that, what I would really encourage is that this commission really focus on issues that relate to McMinnville Water and Light functionality, our operational needs, concerns, and any concerns around implementation, fee timeline, but really on what is operational with McMinnville Water and Light, and really not focus on giving policy direction that's out of its purview. And I do believe some of the revisions to the ordinance and some of these recommendations are suggesting that the Water and Light Commission give direction to council that really is outside of its purview. And I think we want to be very careful of that. And I think that will set us up for conflict. And these good faith conversations has really been to bring us from an acknowledged place of conflict into a good working relationship. So I want to make sure that we continue that going forward. So those are my overall general thoughts. And I know there's a lot there to unpack. And thank you for letting me lead that. I think with kind of those things, I'd like to open this up to conversation of the commission. Jody, I see you unmuted your mic. Do you have thoughts to start?
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the background, not being privy to the conversations that you had with members of the commission previous to this. I did have a couple questions. When I read through the packet, it looked like your finance director did make comments. And I'm wondering, were those comments after Sam Justice made his comments, and her comments are in red, I believe. So is that, Sam, can you clarify for me? So you made comments, and then did it go back to the finance director for comments?
No, these comments have not gone back. The finance director's comments are redline were on the document that was sent to us.
Oh, okay.
And
Thank
so
you for that.
These comments are to you with a question on whether you want these to be forwarded back to the city. So we purposely not shared these back to the city before the commission had an opportunity to look at them.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. I misread that. That's all I have for this moment. Thank you.
You're muted, Remy. I assume you call on me. Okay,
I
thank
did.
you.
Chair Tankersley, thank you.
Yes, so as you mentioned, I was part of those meetings, and I had a different take on this. I saw a lot of it as moving forward what the meetings talked about. First of all, just to go to the last minute comment about the issue with the landlords. I didn't hear either John or Mark say, the city should do something, just that they didn't know the city would realize that. And I would suspect, having talked to Sam about some of the constraints on the city, that the city needs to know that so it can figure out whether you're in fact imposing a tax on property ownership rather than, living here or doing something. So, I think that's what that's about, based on what Sam has talked to me about before. The second thing is that I thought the city wanted comments back, and that's why they sent it to us. My understanding was that we had talked about we would bill a city services fee based on whether it's residential or general service. If it's general service, obviously it's just the meter size. If it's residential, then there's a base rate, but then there would be to try to capture in a very rough way the multifamily. We would use the meter and we would use the master meter and then the individual electric meter. So master water, individual electric. But the city, the ordinance doesn't talk about that. The ordinance talks about multifamily. And so the concern I have with the whole thing is that the way the ordinance is written, and then the ordinance talks about mobile home parks, which weren't talked about that I remember in these meetings. And the concern is that if the ordinance says multifamily And all we're able to do is bill based on the master water meter and the electric meters to give that multifamily rate. I think you're asking for trouble for both of us. We won't be able to do what the city wants us to do because they want to say multifamily. They want to specify it's multifamily, and we're not really set up to do that necessarily. It depends on the way the system is set up, and so I think it is appropriate for staff to say that. And on a larger point, I'm very concerned that if the city, and you can call this policy, and in one sense, it's none of my business, I guess, but we had all committed to try to do this as efficiently and quickly as possible. But if the city specifies things like they did in here with these definitions and developed land and undeveloped land and catching things that we can't catch, and then NISC says we can't do that, then we've got to go back and get the ordinance changed, and your implementation is going to be delayed dramatically. So I think it's time for us to talk about this now. I mean, and I can think of lots of ways where you would not have an electric meter, or not have an electric meter, but have and not have a general services water meter, but still have it be developed under those definitions. And I mean, some of the city definitions talk about service by anything, including stormwater. I think every lot's serviced by stormwater utility, isn't it? I mean, that's my gut reaction. So the concern is, and I don't think our staff was trying to blow the deal up. I think our staff was trying to make it work. And I'm very, I mean, I read this entirely differently than you did. And probably because I've spent more time kind of in the weeds with, what the problems are. But I'm just, I think we need to talk to, our staff needs to talk to the city staff, and we need to tell our staff to talk to the city staff about these things. And if the city staff feels like they have to put in mobile home parks and multifamily, I don't know how we can do that.
Well, let me interrupt
an approximation.
Really quickly
Sure.
here. Now, I'm not saying how city staff feels. City staff has not seen any of these amendments. I have a city manager that's on vacation. This has been in, I've had this in my inbox for less than 25 hours. So to say, I am not discouraging conversation between staff. I am encouraging conversation between staff at both city and water. I also want to get towards that end. And I think we do have the ability to include things that give the kind of direction that says we want to allow for modifications and implementation, that this has to work for water and light. That was one of our goals that we set early on, right? It has to work for water and light, it has to work with NCIS. That's it. We all agree. It has to. John Dietz, please. Sorry.
So part of the problem is, and I think with the ordinance, is your definition of residential is different than our definition and the way we bill customers. So what Sam is trying to do is get those in alignment. It's not trying to rewrite it, it's trying to define this, to get the definitions the same. And so my feeling on this is that the ordinance should be the concept and not the detail. Okay, so if I'm going to write the ordinance should basically say, we would like a service fee. It is basically X. We want a low income discount that is X times 0.1, whatever it is. And we want multifamily at this. And then the rate structure should have those details in it. That way you're not changing the ordinance every single time, you're just changing the rate structure. And that's kind of the way we think, and that's the way we set up our rate structures, so that the policy part doesn't change every single time. It's just the rate structure. And so that's, I think, what Sam's trying to get to is let's get our definitions to match. Because right now, the way you have your definitions in the ordinance and the way we define multifamily and residential don't line up. And that's going to be a problem for us because that's the way we bill.
So
that's what
Remy,
Sam's trying to get to.
is there a way that we can do this that won't create the reaction that you had? I mean, the staff sent us this thing that had other things than what we talked about. Our staff responded with an attempt to make it go because you want stuff to go quickly. And then, so what, I mean, do we need more explanation than we had in this? Or, I mean, I'm afraid that if we don't respond, you're going to do that, and then we won't be able to accomplish this.
I've never suggested not responding. What I'm suggesting is that the way the request, the intent of this meeting is for the commission to give direction to staff on how to respond to the city. So I think that is still the intent. I'm not encouraging staff to not respond to the city, and absolutely to say what will and won't work. But there are parts of this that I feel we very much had gone over and cleared multiple times, especially regarding the conversations around multifamily. And I did also, I mean, just in transparency, I called Adam Garvin and shared this letter with him, and he also was taken aback and felt that it was a departure from the good faith conversations we were having, that we were looking for what would work, and that this is a presentation of why this kind of won't work. And
I think it's not why it won't work. I think it's just identifying the difficulty in getting it done. So, for example, when you talk about multifamily, you're really talking about two separate divisions. We have dwell counts in the water division, and we have electric meters in the electric division. And it's trying to get the dwell counts to match with the electric meters that are at those residents. Okay, so we don't have a way to say, I have this many dwell counts. How do I cross-reference those to electric meters at those residents, at those apartment complexes? Okay, so we have to figure out a way to look at, okay, I have, let's say, what is it, 3,300 dwell counts, John, 36, whatever the number is, dwell counts. That's going to make an assumption that we have that many people in apartment complexes. Now I have to figure out how to get the electric meters that match up with that. And that's, I think, what John's trying to get to, is how we align the dwell count with the electric meter, because that's the device that everybody has, is the electric meter is the key. And that's all we're talking about. It's not saying we can't do something. It's saying this is going to be difficult because we've identified this and that, and we're trying to make it do something that it has historically we've not done before.
Okay.
Is that a good
John, aren't we in the process of asking NISC how to do that?
Yeah.
Aren't we?
And Mark or John could probably, I wasn't in that meeting.
We've had one meeting with them discussing this, and they said that they can help us find this list of customers, but I think it's on us to find how to identify them. They said that they can help us find a master spreadsheet list, and they can return any data that's in our database, but we have to find a way to isolate those particular customers. And I think what we're running into is we have no way in our system to flag this one account as a customer that is served by a mastered water meter.
So John, I thought that when we talked about this with the city staff, that the thought was, if you had an electric meter and did not have a water meter, that was you, right?
We did, and I said that is a good way to get that representation, but I don't know that it's going to be a 100% accurate.
Okay, but that doesn't mean we can't. We can because we did talk about that. And
we are currently looking for another way too with our mapping to maybe pull those customers as well. But what I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew was, we don't have a way to just say there's 3,667 dwell counts that we provided the city by using the dwell count counts. There is no way to just say, give me all 3,667 of those customers, because there's no correlation.
Okay, so to Remy's point, it would probably be more appropriate when you send this out to say that, as we discussed, we can identify people who have electric meters but not water meters. But that is going to be that's going to miss some people and it's going to catch some people. We're looking for a better way, but if we can't find one, you're going to have an imperfect system. That's what you're trying to say, right?
I think that you nailed that. Yes.
Let's say that then, okay?
Yeah, thank you, Tom.
And-
Yeah, I think you're getting at the heart of some of the problem is that this, from my perspective coming in, this comes across as another roadblock instead of a path towards solutions. And we've just put so much effort into solutions. I'd like the recommendation, just as you just did, Chair Tankersley, the recommendations to staff to make sure that we're talking about how we can solve this problem, not what will be in the way of getting the problem solved.
So, but Remy, if it's a problem that we don't see a way and that hasn't been discussed, for instance, the undeveloped lots that they have listed in there, or the mobile home parks, that wasn't discussed. I don't recall that being discussed either. So if it's something like that, what do you want our staff? What would you suggest that our staff?
I mean, I
respond?
think what you say, using your same example from before to reframe and say, this is the option A, we can do it, but these are the pitfalls. We are looking for this other system as well that would be more efficient, or all of the criteria they're met. And we've also we have also discovered we cannot identify, we are unable to identify mobile home parks. I mean, yes, I think it's important to translate what clearly can't be done, but some of these things can be done. And so to just say what can't be done when there are options is more, it's not working towards the end. So your revision on multifamily, I think, is great. And I think that's an appropriate place to also say, we've also discovered that we cannot identify mobile home parks, but it gives options and a pathway forward. And it shows and it demonstrates the pathway forward, which I think is the goal, is to,
Okay, but Remy, the pathway forward, as I understand it, does not include us being able to identify mobile home parks. So
right.
So
I understand
that. Yeah. Okay. So, but when you say pathway forward, that
right. So there are.
Or vacant land that doesn't have a meter on it.
Right. There are things that will not be, I think, calling those specific things out, I'm not taking any issue with saying, hey, we've discovered we can't, I don't know why I'm not defining these things well.
Well, I mean, it wasn't discussed before and we've looked at it, we can't do it. It wasn't something we said we could do, or we thought.
I'm not arguing with you at all on that. I agree.
No, so that's,
right.
I guess that's, is it okay to say it that way?
I mean, if there is something that there is not it's a simple, you've come to the end of the road, that, I mean, of course, why that should be communicated back, but where there are pathways forward, whatever the criteria, whatever the specific call out is, if there is a pathway out of this, then it's not necessarily demonstrated. So your rewrite showed multiple pathways, as opposed to these are all the reasons that this is going to be very difficult for us to do.
So to help staff understand, and me too,
please,
what other items do you think there's a pathway forward on that staff said you can't do here?
I mean, Tom, I would need more than, the last, 24 hours to,
I know you're
to
just,
go
I understand.
through and yeah.
From your comments, I thought you'd already identified those. That's why I asked.
I've identified a lot of things, but I didn't come to rewrite the letter. I just wanted to talk about how we were moving the commission and the city forward into next steps. So what's
Okay.
important.
So maybe it would be better if staff, rather than trying to help them with the revision, just said, this section is a problem because we can't identify mobile home parks. And then the general comments that for us to be able to implement it, it's got to match our system, and this is the way our system works. And I think part of the reason the rewrite was that I thought we'd explained some of this stuff before, and the city staff, and I understand they took it looks like they took somebody else's ordinance and they used it, because there was some of the questions looked like from the city finance director. And that's a legitimate way to do things, but I told staff, and I think you told staff here, that we're in a hurry to get this thing done for you, for the city. And rather than say, this is a problem, and then, the city staff then guesses what will work, I think what Sam was trying to do was to say, if we can do this, and then we get the city's comments back. And I realize that doesn't feel good if you send something and somebody sends something back greatly revised. But on the other hand, frankly, if we didn't need to get this thing done right away, then we do it the other way. I would suggest we just tell us what our concerns are. They take another stab at it, and then we respond to that stab. But if we want to get stuff done, I think, and I'm happy if because you have a better sense of what will make the city happy. I'm happy if you think we should. I would vote to tell staff just to write a list of comments rather than revising things. But I think that will slow things down.
Well, maybe
Yes.
So let me take this approach. So, and with John's help, it's to implement the service fee across the board for everyone, irregardless of anything else. Is that a big issue, John? So let's just start with everybody pays $13. Okay, not putting all these other things in yet. Is that an issue, John?
I don't think so.
Okay, so that's the first thing. So now, as we go into this deeper and deeper, and to get into more finite details, that's where we start getting into trouble. So what we're saying is, we can implement the $13 service fee. That's not an issue. The next step is, I think we talked about how we do it for low income YCAP. We think we figured that out, correct, John?
Yes.
Okay, now we're talking about multifamily. So multifamily, the struggle is we have no connection between the device and the electric meter, correct? So now we're trying to figure out how to do that.
But did we not solve that with
what we talked about was that we could tie the fee to the electric meter, but we have to figure out how to get the customers that are on dwell counts and physically get their electric meter so that we can charge them the right fee. That's, I think, the disconnect, correct, John?
Yeah, and I think the reason that we had all those numbers with dwell counts was the first time we got all these numbers, it was based on water meters only. And we were using the dwell count to help possibly determine a charge based on a dwell count instead of a size. That's where the dwell count came. At some point, it transitioned to electric meters for residentials. And yes, we all know that a landlord that owns an apartment complex has tenants. We just don't have any way of tying that water meter. There's no way to tie in the database who his tenants are based on that water meter.
So what we would have to do is figure out some type of rule to come up with a list of those tenants. So that's what we're trying. That's what I think John's trying to get to, is that's where we're at right now. We need to figure out how to develop that rule so that we can tell NISC, this is how we need you to develop the list of those customers.
Well, and I think even in the memo, it just says we don't have any way to distinguish that. And we're listing a possible way that we could do that by checking electric only accounts, as Tom had mentioned earlier, Commissioner Tankersley, and maybe comparing that to the number of the dwell counts. We think that's a way, but I just want to make sure it's not going to be an accurate way. There might be some that are left out. There might be some extras that are pulled in that would have to be checked manually for accuracy.
Yeah, and so what we're saying is we're not trying to throw roadblocks up. What we're trying to say is, as we go through this process, there's going to be challenges to get certain things done a certain way. And is the city comfortable with this being imperfect? Because it's not going to be perfect.
I mean, it's imperfect because our poverty rate's at 14%, and there's no way that 14% of the bills are going to have relief on them. So I think it's generally accepted that this is imperfect.
And so as long as the city's okay with recognizing that, you know, at the start, this isn't going to be a perfect setup, and over time, we'll try to make it better and better like we've done with electric, water, and sewer. But it's going to take time to get to that point, because the other option is to try to do this whole thing manually, which will just take thousands of man hours.
No, and that's what we've talked about the whole time, is that we wanted to be, our desire was in the construction of this, was that we are working with your existing system. So as we're able to identify more customers that need relief, that whatever the function is, that it's able to be expanded to those customers. That is the desire of the city.
Okay.
And not to tell you how to do it by any means, but to know that there are pathways to get to that end.
And I think that's fair. And I think we're all on the same page on that, because we understand as time goes on, we will, as customers move, transfer service, we will catch those people as time goes on in the future. But we just want to make sure and realize that the struggle is making those connections now. Is how do we make those connections so that we get the most customers up front?
So here's my question. Given the time constraints, should we just do it the way we talked about doing it? And I think we did tell the city that it was going to be imperfect on this issue. If you have an electric meter and you don't have a water meter, then you get the apartment rate, and or the multifamily rate, and just do that, because it sounds as if looking for the better solution now will delay things, right? Right, John? Either John.
Yeah, it can.
Yeah. So again, I think the explanation should say that, you know, as we discussed, we're going to tell NASC to go out and pull in electric meters that don't have a water meter and give them the apartment rate. And, you know, we've been struggling with a way to get to your goals more precisely, but we don't see it easily. And we're just going to do it that way now to get things rolling. Is that, so that way we've told him we tried, we've told him maybe possible later, but right now we don't see it. Is that, it's not worth the time. Is that fair, Remy? Is that was my perception of what came out of that meeting, frankly.
That's what I understood as well. We were
So let's
accepting
just
the
do that,
imperfect
okay?
expansion. Yeah.
Let's just do that, and we'll tell them that we understand it's imperfect, and that we understand from the meeting and from feedback from the mayor that you know, that to get this thing done, we're going to do it this way because it'll never be perfect anyway. But we will try to we can work with them to try to make it better later. Is that okay, James?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
And so then I think the other question is on the ordinance. I think, you know, Remy, you were talking about the ordinance. So what I think Sam's trying to do is align water lights definitions with the city's definitions, because if we don't do that, our definitions are set up with how we bill, and the city's definitions in the ordinance don't line up with that, which we can't do.
Well, I think it would be useful to say that at the head in the memo that goes to the city as well, that this is the intent of this rewrite, is to create these shared definitions to make sure that we're operating.
Yeah, and I would say maybe to make sure that we don't have to restructure the billing system.
Well, but we're not going to, John. I think it's to make sure that that the ordinance, that what everybody agrees we're going to do matches the ordinance. Because we're not going to restructure the billing system. So, and if we just had an agreement that we're going to treat multifamily. So if we use their definitions for multifamily, then what we're billing doesn't match the ordinance, and everybody's messed up.
Yep. Yeah, and that's what.
So let's explain it that. We'll just explain it that way. Not because it's not possible for us to redo the whole system. We're not going to do that. The commission wants to do that, John.
Yeah.
My guess.
Right.
So does that make sense? So Remy, your idea is we do a memo that went with the revisions to explain why we're doing it, right?
Well, yes, because it does just read like a very gutted, I mean, yes, I think that would be helpful and in vein with all of these good faith conversations that have been conducted and really trying to realign a really positive and healthy working relationship between the staff at the city and the staff at Water and Light, which I really hope can happen. And so, yes, I think explaining that intent in advance could be helpful here. Maybe it's not an operational need, but
so we want it to work together. We want to restore that relationship. We do.
Yeah. Okay. I think that would be great. I do have one other concern to address in the memo too. But I don't know if there's other thoughts on this. I don't want to jump forward without giving everybody an opportunity to contribute and speak. Nothing else?
No.
Okay. The other area of concern that I had in the memo was number 7, and this is where I'm saying that the Water and Light Commission should refrain from giving policy direction to the city council. And maybe that's just the way I read it. But that's how it read to me, was that the Water and Light Commission, with comment number 7, is providing direction to the city council.
Well, I can address that,
Thank you.
Madam Mayor. I mean, and I guess what I'm trying to point out there is a recognition that the Water and Light Commission does not operate under the local budget law, which is a distinction that was created was created and recognized back in the early 70s. And so Water and Light Commission has never operated under those provisions. And the reason we don't, or the structural distinction, is we don't operate out of general funds. And so this city service charge is going into the general fund. And so if we receive payments back as compensation, I'm a bit concerned that we create a wall here that keeps the water fund and electric fund separate, and we're conscious of that, because if we start operating out of the general fund, that will trigger a local budget law requirement, and so that's something the commission needs to be aware of. So that's what that is specifically about, the reference to the budget law.
So Remy, if Sam explains what that's about, would that be, just wants to make it clear that we're not dipping into general fund money here? It's important to us that we not have to deal with all of that.
Right. Well, I mean, I'm not really comfortable saying what would work and not work. I think that it doesn't really, it still causes me concern that the Water and Light Commission give the city council direction in terms of how to manage a budget. That seems, I think there is a way of highlighting your concern so that the city legal is aware of your concern, but I don't think that this commission has the ability, nor should be giving direction to the city council about how its funds are used. I understand what you're saying your concern is. I think there's a way of relaying that that's not giving direction. The ordinance should provide the general fund revenue is segregated, etc. Well, that's telling them what should or must happen. So I'm not comfortable with that policy direction coming from the Water and Light Commission to the city council. Do you think I'm misreading that? But that's definitely how I read it.
No, I didn't. I just didn't quite understand. I mean, is it that we shouldn't put that language as a revision in, but we should explain that we need language for us to do this? We need language that says we're not being funded by the general fund. We're just being reimbursed for costs. That if he just says that, is that a good enough?
This is specific to your, are you specifically talking about operating costs for implementation? Does this need to be in the ordinance, I guess, or is this really something that needs, we've talked about that there needs to be a working relationship, that there needs to be cost reimbursement for implementation. We've talked about all those things. So
I guess so. Sam, does it work if the agreement says that, and it's not in the ordinance?
Well, I think it should be documented. I think we're in a better place if we're in a better place if we can say to whoever the Department of Revenue or whoever comes knocking on our door that says we're out of compliance with local budget law, that we've set up a division that we recognize, and both the commission and the city council recognize that the water and light departments are not being supported by general fund dollars.
Right. So, but if we say that in the agreement,
right, I suppose it could be documented.
Right.
It could be documented. It could be documented in an agreement, and I suppose it wouldn't have to be documented in the ordinance. I'm based on my conversations with current city council, I'm suspicious of whether the city council will agree to enter an agreement, and so I'm
sorry, you're concerned what?
Whether the city council, I think it requires, there needs to be an agreement between the city council and the commission regarding these payments. I think I would recommend that as legal counsel for the commission, that there is an agreement between the commission and the city council relating to how the funds are segregated, to be consistent with the city charter that requires that the water and light funds be kept separate and apart. And that's consistent with the local budget law, which allows water and light as a commission operating without ad valorem tax support out of the general fund to operate not under as an exception to the local budget law. So, I think that should be documented. We should be able to point to that and say, this is what we're doing to segregate our funds.
Perhaps I'm missing something. Where is your I think there's a couple different I don't feel like it resolves the issue here. I hear what you're saying, that you want it defined how water and light will be reimbursed. Well, that makes complete sense. Of course, that contract language, but I don't quite, and I understand the need to highlight a concern regarding budget law. I don't know that we need to have an agreement about what water and light, or what the city does with the water. Why does water and light need that agreement? Isn't that onus upon the city to be responsible and manage its the money that comes in regardless of where it comes in, and we don't have agreements that state that generally. Yes, Mr. Deeds?
So I think what Sam's trying to get at is the city council going to set up an agreement on how water light gets reimbursed on any other issues that we have? So that's what I think Sam's talking about. So
Well,
basically like an IGA or some type of MOU or something like that. So that it's documented that water and light will be reimbursed for services rendered, or however you want to say that.
Well, and also that it's documented that we've agreed to and have the authority from the city to collect this fee.
Yeah.
I mean, I think under the charter, we don't have the right to collect this fee. Right? I mean, we have a right to collect, the charter, I think, says we have a right to collect water and electric fees. So I mean, my whole thought is that, you know, this is really not, it's not our responsibility to do it. It's not our right to do it unless the city council and the commission agree to do it.
So,
And then the idea is that we would have an agreement like that.
yes. And I think we have an agreement for sewer, correct, Sam?
That's correct.
So that's, I think, where you're going is we need to have an agreement that says, yes, we have the right to collect this, and water and light will be reimbursed for the costs of collecting this service fee.
And I agree with Sam. We can just add a clause that's, you know, to avoid potential problems that says, and we are not being supported by the general fund. Then that's, then I don't. I mean, why should we set ourselves up for a fight with Department of Revenue if the city can add that line to the agreement or the ordinance?
How does this, or does this, Sam, this is a question for you, tie in with how does this tie in with other conversations that we're having? The conversation, how about, well, how does this, I don't know quite how to frame my thought. Okay, well, I am satisfied that I've expressed my concern about the way that that's going to flow through. The commission's heard it. Our legal counsel has heard it. Chair, you've heard it. I hear also the response on that, and you know how you choose to communicate that back. I would I'll defer to our general counsel for how to relate the concern back. But the part of it that concerns me is not the construction of an agreement in which the city reimburses water and light. It's direction coming from the Water and Light Commission to the city council that concerns me. And maybe my concern is unfounded. Maybe I'm reading into it more than is there, but that is where my concern lies.
So are you okay if Sam, so I guess the question is, it sounds like you're comfortable that we need to have some type of agreement, whether it's an MOU or whatever we do for these types of costs.
Yes, completely.
Okay, so I think to me, then it's pretty simple that, like Tom said, is that we just need to figure out how to word that agreement so that these issues are in that agreement.
Great. Well, that satisfies my the things that I wanted to discuss in here. Do other commissioners have concerns, questions, thoughts? Okay, well,
so let me make sure so that staff has the right direction. So it sounds like what you'd like us to do is put something together, some type of document that basically goes with our comments that says, here's what we're trying to understand or get to is these items. You know, it's the multifamily, it's the definitions of residential, so they line up with some type of explanation of why we put the comments in we put in. Is that a fair?
I think that's fair, and that we, we do have want some flexibility around implementation, and so we can.
Does the
Yeah,
commission
but
want to?
John, I would feel better if we recast the language about multifamily to make it clear what we discussed. Okay, I think the language, if it was misinterpreted by the mayor and council president Garvin, I think we need to recast that language. But other than that, I think we need to explain what we're up to here, and put in language that says, it's essential to Water and Light Commission that that we have something documented that we are not being funded by general fund revenues here, but whether it's in the ordinance or whether it's in the agreement, either way works, if that's what Sam's concluded.
So would you also like, before we send that over, to maybe send it to you and Remy? Make sure.
Yeah, I think that would be good. Remy, you okay with that? We can get it and get some feedback that way. That would be great.
So maybe I'll have John and Sam work on that.
Yeah, and then I guess my question is that, I know we haven't heard from the other commissioners, but I guess this should be commission direction. So is that the general consensus of the commission overall?
Well, I'm glad you asked. I was just about to introduce that to the as well. So thank you. I think we do need to hear from Kathy, Jody, and Ed about what direction they'd like to go. Kathy, would you like to start?
Sure. I feel like there's quiet here because there's a lot of conversations that have happened that we haven't been a part of. So it's, we're just, I'm coming at this feeling not fully informed of the whole entire picture and all of the discussions. So really, really, counting on John and Tom and Sam to, kind of lead the charge here and have them take the lead. I feel like everything that was talked about today makes sense. I feel like it's good that you came forward and talked about how an initial, interpretation might put us off path a little bit, and maybe we can present things a little bit differently, or at least a little more clearly, so the intent is very clear of what was trying to be done. I would want to reiterate, because I don't feel like it was followed up upon by everybody, is that I do feel like the idea of all of the work that was done with the ordinance, it's the first time I've seen it as well. Really, I do feel like it hopefully was coming from a place, and I believe it's coming from a place that if there was like a sort of a boilerplate ordinance that was trying to address all this, that, to facilitate a faster process of getting through, that work was done as an effort to be helpful, not an effort to, throw out a bunch of work that was already done. I know, sitting on several different boards and different places, when I see a lot of language around something I've never dealt with before, it's a lot to interpret and understand. And obviously Sam's looked at all of these things a lot of times. So I hope that, the city council will see it that way, and not as a way that, there's a pushback by Water and Light, because I don't believe that there is. So thanks for letting me have a say.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Christensen, do you want to go next?
Thank you. I agree with much of what Kathy said. I think that when these conversations started a while ago with the commission, I was very adamant that we were partners and that we should continue to approach this situation in that way. So I too believe that the staff and Sam's guidance is about getting us there to the goal, and not in any way trying to stop the process, because I think this is these are important discussions, and it's, kind of the devil's in the details now, definitions aligning, system understanding what the system can do and can't do. All of these things are now coming to clarity in what we need to address. So I really appreciate the perspective that you've provided, Mayor, that it's not going to be perfect, because I know how hard this team, the staff works at Water and Light to get to reports to us and detail and data. So I know that how much time they spend in providing information to the commission. So I know in the reports that they've given us about how they've approached this, there's a lot of work that's being done. I also know the city's done a lot of work and the council's done a lot of work, but I see us that we're closer now than we've been. And I would just reiterate what John said earlier, is I think the ordinance to me is policy direction, and that really is the city's place, and that the detail of the agreement, the rate structure, all of that, separating those two things, I think there's a lot of value in that approach. And so I kind of giving some thought about how the changes were made in the ordinance, that to me feels like you're getting, kind of eliminating the some of the detail and getting more to the policy. That's what I saw the suggestions were. So I look forward to seeing, how this plays out. And I do appreciate that we're under a tight timeline, and it is good that we're allowing some grace in that it's not going to be perfect, and we're going to continue to sort of massage this process. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Gormley? Oh, you're muted, sir.
Maybe it's best to be muted. For all the years that I've sat at this table, this is one of the saddest emotional meetings I've sat through. I'm saddened for the city because of the financial problems they've got. For decades, we've prided ourselves in being out front and managers and proactive and not reactive. And the timeline is creating a reactive mode for all of us. The city's desperate to get funds raised. We're desperate to accommodate the city, and it's just patience is short with everyone. I understand. Like the two other commissioners, I've had no part of these conversations other than to get things secondhand. Many years ago, there was the conversations about trying to find other cities that were similar to McMinnville and have McMinnville go on their own with their own billing system and that. And today's one of those days when I wish we could have fully pushed that through, because it's a horse of a different color. And so anyway, I'm saddened for the situation you're put in, Remy. Very sad. So that's it.
Well, thank you, Commissioner. I'll take the condolences. I will say the positive that is coming out of this that I think is good universally here is, and the reason for the rush is that the council made what, in my opinion, was a poor decision of using $1.8 million of ARPA funding to backfill the operating budget. And so while there are greater budgetary issues that are going to be so important for us to address as a community going forward for long-term resolution and understanding what we need to operate or what we need to not operate, if that's the case. In the short term, this does allow us to pull those ARPA dollars back out of the operating budget. And that was a reactionary move. And so while this is reactionary as well to meet this timeline, I hope that in a sense, it kind of undoes some of that reactionary work that was done, because this has been a long discussed methodology, even though we have not had agreement in the past. We weren't pulling something new out of the hat. And I do think saving those $1.8 million so that they can be used appropriately that these once in a lifetime monies. I hear your sadness, and I reflect it as well. It is a hard situation to come into when we have discontent between these two bodies that have always worked together and always have worked together well. It is a hard situation to come into with a perpetual budget deficit. And it's very much my goal to bring people back together, to work together, to get these issues resolved, both short-term and long-term. And I very much appreciate all of the effort, not only of McMinnville Water and Light staff, but also of Chair Tankersley and the others who sat in those conversations, so that hopefully our community can make good use of these $1.8 million ARPA dollars, invest them wisely, and come up with more long-term solutions for our city in terms of funding. I do appreciate that everybody heard out my critiques on this as well. And by no means do I want that to come across as though there's a lack of appreciation for staff at McMinnville Water and Light or the commission. I have a tremendous amount of appreciation and respect and gratitude, and especially gratitude to Chair Tankersley for being willing to do all of these meetings, all of these fairly intense meetings in order to bring this work forward. So perhaps I should have led with that, and I will take that note from you, Mayor Gormley, as well, to perhaps lead with that in the future. So thank you for bringing that up. Are there any other thoughts, or are we ready to give some direction to finalize our direction to staff? Do you need a motion?
I'd move that staff develop a document as a result of these conversations this afternoon, and that it needs to have approval by the mayor and the chair before it goes to the city proper.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion by Commissioner Gormley and a second by Commissioner Tate. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 And the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Right.
Madam Mayor, if I could just make a quick point here. First of all, thank you for bringing this up. I think it's really going to be a much better response to the city after this discussion. Second, I agree with Jody and Kathy about it's unfortunate that they could not be in the loop on this stuff. But just to make it clear, the public meetings law requires, as I understand it, to be careful that we really comply. I was in the meetings with Remy, so anybody else gets involved and she's on the commission as well, then we've got a quorum and we've got to notice it to the press. And so I've had to resist calling everybody to talk about this, but I think I have resisted, and it's unfortunate. I mean, it's good that we don't have secret decisions in back rooms, but given some of the earlier, it was better to work things out to get us back on the right track, I think. And Remy has done a wonderful job getting people together, I think. So let's keep moving forward with that. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for making time for this special session today, and the meeting is adjourned.
We're going to adjourn. There is a second action item on there.
Oh, shoot. I'm sorry. I
That's
rushed to adjournment. You're right.
Yeah.
I was hyper-focused. I apologize. Okay, great. Let me get down here. Where's our help me find the second action item?
The next item is the billing agreement. And so the question is whether you want to authorize a billing agreement with the city. I can tell you that I'm going to be leaving next week. I'm going to be out on vacation for about 4 weeks. And so I'm going to be gone. I know that the city is currently without permanent council. I think that before we enter into agreement with NISC to to go forward with the steps that are necessary to implement the testing process that moves us into the actual implementation. That and this is up to the commission. It's up to the commission whether how you want to proceed on this. But I know there's been discussion, and we had discussion in this meeting about a billing agreement with the city. And so I put together a very short document. I don't know if you want to authorize it or authorize it with revisions that are approved by the chair and the general manager in my absence, or how you want to do that, or if you want to do it at all.
And Sam, as I understand, this is an interim agreement that once we figure out exactly what's going on with NASC, there would be a final, more detailed agreement. Is that correct?
It's written as a temporary document. We put together, actually, we did the other document with the sewer also in anticipation of a follow-on agreement with the city, sort of a global agreement that would address both the sewer service charge and eventually stormwater. But so yes, that's the quick answer is yes. It's designed as a temporary.
So I would, just for me, and I want to hear from everybody else, but I would be comfortable with us sending to the city, see what they say, and continuing on the path with NASC, because as I've always said, if we don't have an agreement, we can't bill for them. So I think that we will reach an agreement, but I think it's good to get the ball rolling.
I'm fine with making it happen. The quicker we get it done, is the quicker we can help the city with their relief.
Sam, does this document have a time frame to it? Or is it just considered temporary until further notice?
It actually, it's ongoing. It has a 60-day termination provision, so it can be terminated by either party. But otherwise it would just go forward. I don't know what the time frame is for reaching a final document. I mean, I don't know when we'll get there exactly.
Is this the document where you would want to add language about the general fund information, or that feels like that needs to be in a permanent document?
Well, actually, there is references into this document in paragraph 2 to general fund support for water and light. In fact, there's language in there about reimbursement only, and no city general fund support water and light department or its funds. So that is in this document. So I guess the question is, do you want to just forward it to the city? Do you want to authorize any action on it? And we can hold off and address this at next Tuesday's meeting also, if you want to do that.
I'd love to hear from members of the commission.
I suggest just
Chair?
calling on people. Just start calling on people.
Yeah, okay, great. Thanks, Chair. Let's start with you.
Yeah, I'd be good with that. I think maybe we could send it to the city for comment, and then we can always authorize it, when the time comes. But let them look at it, and so we haven't, and then just see what they say. And like Sam said, he'll be gone, so we may not get it done. If they sign it, great. If they don't, Sam, 4 weeks.
Right.
Okay. Good for you. Okay. So I'm good with just sending to the city and saying, here's a draft. The commission would like you to review it and, get back to us.
Okay.
Right. Commissioner Christensen?
I'm comfortable with the same.
And Commissioner Tate?
I'm comfortable with that.
Excellent. Would you like a motion?
My understanding is that's the consensus of the commission, just to provide it to the city as a draft for comment back. So I think that we could just show that in the minutes as the consensus of the commission, unless Commissioner Gormley objects, because I don't think I heard from him.
No, I'm fine.
Okay. Yeah. I heard him say he was good with it before. So that wonderful.
Okay. Yeah, I missed that.
Okay. The meeting is now adjourned. Yes or no? Is there something else I'm missing, sir?
No, I think we've covered the two action items.
I believe we now have as well. Thank you very much.